Senator Mary Siri Kearney.
Thank you very much, Cathaoirleach, and I just want to commend my colleagues, Senator Ardagh and Senator Crowe, for bringing forward this legislation. I think that it's really valuable and important that we move to a place of absolute transparency. There is no excuse now for there not being so, and for some of the reasons that have already been shared with us. Insofar as there is discrimination, there is absolute clear disparity in rates of pay depending on where someone is from, depending on their ability to negotiate a new workplace, I think that in many instances we see, unfortunately, that particularly people from Eastern Europe are exploited, and over the years I've been involved in cases defending employees in such instances, and it is really quite shameful how some employers think it's all right to treat them. And consequently, we need statutory footing. We need as much as possible on statutory mandatory footing. I would agree on a couple of things, though, or I would question on a couple of things. I think it should go for any role. Lower paid roles generally have a rate per hour. So having the more than 50 employees, I think probably those with less than 50 employees, a lot of them will give those rates per hour. In fact, it tends to be the more highly remunerated positions that don't ever disclose what the rate of pay is. So I think that the 50 workers, while I understand it's consistent with other pieces of legislation, or having a threshold is consistent with other pieces of legislation. So I can see where the genesis of this came from. However, I'm not sure that it's necessary, so I would ask you to think about that. I think that we could go further. We could look that employers have an obligation in showing a complete transparency in how they arrive at a rate of pay, that there should be a process within all workplaces. Any companies that I've worked with over the years, I've always thought that they set out a matrix of, when we arrive at a rate, at an annual salary, what are the steps that bring us to that? Why, what is the level of qualification? Insofar as when you're interviewing for a position, you have to have a matrix of competencies, a matrix of decision making set out so that it can be clearly demonstrated in the event of a claim under the Employment Equality, and also to assist interviews. But when we have benchmarking, when we have industry norms are published, certainly within the recruitment industry on a regular basis, when we have all of that in the domain, there isn't any reason why we shouldn't also have an obligation, perhaps in the WRC aspect of this, that a company has to arrive at the matrix of, has to produce a matrix of how did they arrive at that particular figure and what did they include in it. Because it may well be that if they advertise a range that you're looking at, that if you have a higher level competency, higher level experience, that will give an increment of X and Y, so that we have a scope within the rates that are advertised, but that we have a rationale that is predetermined before an individual is engaged with, and that would lend itself to a good transparency purpose also. So I think that would be useful. As regards, I agree absolutely in us not asking a person of what their rate of pay is expected. I'm a little bit nervous about it with regard to how I know the recruitment industry, as in agencies, operate. Because sometimes if somebody has a particular salary expectation, they're going to need to be asked. So presumably there is a part of their engagement with an employment agency when the soliciting of what sort of salary expectations you have is permissible, but then with regard to it's an employer or in a particular category, because there's no point in me going forward to an employment agency and having an expectation of what I want and making sure that
it's not in the law.
Yeah,
it's not in this bill.
Well, you mention agencies though in it. You prohibit agencies from seeking.
Asking for former payslips.
Yeah. Thank you for answering the question. Okay, so it doesn't go that far. My reading of it on Sunday when I was doing the thing, I thought, gosh, I'm a little bit worried about the engagement with agencies. I get that you have in it, and perhaps it's in an explanatory note somewhere, of voluntarily information, or nothing should preclude you from voluntarily giving the information. But I think that we just need to be careful on the operation so that employment agencies can function, You know, I have worked with the recruitment industry, and so I can see things like that involved in it. But to be honest, anything that steps us towards and forward all the way in transparency is to be absolutely applauded and completely supported. Could we go further? Yeah, I think we could. I think we could. But you know what? Maybe we will win this war in small steps, and this is one battle at a time, and this is one clear battle that I'm very happy to support. Thank you.